Four move the Royals could make to have the perfect offseason.
Hey, what's good, y'all? It's your boy JD6 here. I'm with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man. Welcome into the KC Sports Authority podcast. Keegan Russell, Christopher Tenpenny with you here tonight. And Chris, it's been a few weeks since we've chatted some Royals baseball. I know we talked some Chiefs not too long ago, but we're going to talk some Royals offseason talk as where you have four moves, or the four moves that Chris you came up with to have the perfect offseason for the Royals. But before we get into that, of course, you can find us over here on the podcast on YouTube at KC Sports Authority or KCSA Pod. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below if you're new to the show. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and do so. You can check us out weekly for content on Chiefs, Royals, KU football, KU basketball, as well as our weekly editions of Game Day Gambles and our sports betting content, some fantasy football talk. You can also hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at KCSA Pod. Well, Chris, we got four moves, but before we get into those four moves, one of the things that did happen in the last couple of weeks that we can briefly touch on so far this offseason, we saw the extension for Michael Waka. We talked about that as being a strong likelihood of happening, and how basically not the whole offseason, but the offseason was going to start with, does Waka come back? Do we bring him back, or is that money used elsewhere? And of course, we saw the contract extension. So he's locked up for the next couple of years in the rotation. Really, the Royals rotation doesn't seem like it's going to change much, as we'll talk about JJ's comments from some of the winter meetings. But just any other thoughts you have on the extension of Waka? Do you think the deal was fair, how the money shakes out?
Yeah, I think this had to be the first domino, just because that he was going to get a qualifying offer, which was a big reason why he got the 3 for $51, is they felt, Waka's camp felt, that the qualifying offer was really going to hinder his free agents market. Having a draft pick attached to like a 34-year-old pitcher is really tough for other teams to fully dive in. So the Royals said, hey, both came to agreement. Hey, 3 years, 51. You're here for basically the rest of your career to an extent. Like you like it here. Your buddy Seth Lugo is going to be here at least another year. So like it worked out perfect.
Yeah, and as we're going to talk about the perfect offseason, I think that was a perfect way to start.
For sure.
You bring back a guy that was really solid in the rotation this year, pretty reliable, solid number 3, number 4 guy, but could easily start a game 1 or game 2 in a playoff scenario if you need him to. So love that move there, which is probably going to kind of kick off the domino effect, like you said, there with some of these other moves. So we've got 4 moves for you guys we're going to get into. Before we get to those 4 moves, I did want to mention one comment from JJ's, one of his press conferences during these winter meetings. With the re-signing of Michael Waka, there's been a lot of question marks on what would the Royals do with the number 4, number 5 spot in the rotation. Would they go after starting pitcher in free agency? Would they look to move someone like Singer or Lynch or Bubic or Marsh for another piece? And JJ said in his press conference, talked about a couple things. Well, first off, he said, hey, we're comfortable with the starting pitching right now. You've got Waka, Lugo, Reagan, Singer, Marsh. Chris Bubic was in the bullpen last year, but we believe he's a starter. Daniel Lynch went to the bullpen and did a nice job, but he's another one who could be a starter. We don't expect to be in the market for a starter moving forward. We're going to try and focus on some other things. Initial thoughts on that comment?
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Fans that are trying to get rid of Brady Singer or trying to bring in, spend money that, while the Royals are using more money than they have in the past, still they aren't the Yankees. They are going to have to be smart with where it goes. To try to bring in a starter like that just never made sense. You like your first top 4. Brady is a huge part of that. How many teams would kill to have Brady Singer as their 4th starter? And then you have Marsh, Wright, Bubic, Lynch. You could probably bring in a veteran like a Kyle Gibson or someone on a minor league deal or whatever, see what they have in camp. Like, there are plenty of bodies and capable bodies, not just 5 ERA bodies that can go into that 5th starter spot, that it never made sense to spend real resources on another starter once they brought back Waka.
Yeah, you've got 5 guys there. You really got 7, 8 guys that can compete in spring training for that spot. Obviously the injury with Kyle Wright, it'll still be a while until we probably see him, but you don't know what you have there. And so the fact that you can give yourself options, and instead of, if we talked a little bit about the starting pitcher free agent market, it's pretty deep. I mean, you've got your Corbin Burns, your Max Fried, your Blake Snells there at the top. But you've got a class of solid guys in that second tier, third tier, fourth tier that if an injury came up over the next few months or something happened, a move that was made, if there was a trade that we don't see happening that comes to fruition, there's guys you could bring in. But right now, yeah, don't go spend more money on a strength. Let's use some of those resources to fill these other positions that we're going to get into, which are 4 positions. But yeah, the second thing he also mentioned is again the Brady Singer talk. He said, "Hey, Brady, we like Brady. He's locked
Yeah.
in the rotation. He's basically the number 4 guy. We feel good there." So could be that he is not going to be included in the offseason move, as a lot of fans have talked about. But if the right team calls with the right package, maybe the Royals consider it. So we're going to assume, though, that things are as they are. So heading into the rest of this offseason, Chris, there's 4 moves you think the Royals need to make to end up having the perfect offseason. So let's start with the first one. First one you sent to me was a right-handed infielder.
Yeah, I think they need someone preferably that can play second. A lot of it is because first off, they struggle. They were one of the worst teams in the league. I think it was like an 81 WRC plus, which 100 is average. They were 19 to nerd it down a little bit, like 19 points below average against left-handed pitching. That's tough. And so they need someone to help with that. And also Massey, like he played in, I think 100 games. He never played a lot just because of that back issue. He's went on the IL a few times. He's a lefty, so having a right-handed bat that you could platoon with, maybe even using the DH on some days against righties, like I think that would really lengthen this lineup and also make last year when Massey went down, we had a combination of Nick Lofton, Adam Frazier, Garrett Hampson. They even moved Michael over there for a little bit to try to get like your Paul DeYoungs and those kind of. CJ Alexander got called up.
Mm-hmm.
If you all remember that, because they were trying to figure out what to do at second base when Massey went down. So it's a clear need, and I just right-handed preferably because again of the issues with left-handed pitching.
So obviously, if we look internally, the first option probably would still be Nick Lofton. I don't know if that really does enough for us. Not that he was terrible, it just he doesn't look like a major leaguer.
I love
Um,
Nick Lofton as the 28th, 29th
yes,
man. He can play
sure,
every position. He puts the bat on the ball. Like you have someone on the 15-day IL and you need him to play for a couple weeks and spot starts, bring him up.
yeah.
You need him to be the second half of a platoon or playing 3 times a week over MLB season. Yeah, good luck.
So if it's not him, I would think the other internal option would be Chiefs. The Royals find a third baseman they like, and Michael shifts back to second.
Right.
There's not a ton of third base free agency that's really linked to the Royals. Alex Bregman's been linked to the Royals, but he's probably going to get a deal that's a little rich for
Right.
what we can handle. So if it's not Lofton and it's not Garcia, what are some options that you see as a reliable potential option?
So I've got 2 options. I'm actually going to start with the trade option that you and I haven't actually talked about yet, but it's been in the news forever. People have been begging for the Royals to trade for Jonathan India from the Reds
Mm-hmm.
because they
Yep.
have so many infielders. I think the Reds pumped the brakes on it this year because Matt McClain ended up being hurt a lot more, was a lot more severe than they initially thought. So having India was big for the Reds. Now with him coming back, going to be a little healthier, India may be expendable. He's a guy that I think you can DH him or DH Massey against righties, and then he will play, in the field against lefties. Like he's a guy that's going to play almost every day for you. So I think that's one option that I think he was teammates with Brady at Florida. There's already some connections there that I think Royals fans would enjoy. The other one you and I talked about a little bit is bringing in Glaber. And Gleyber Torres is someone who I think by name may get a little bit more money than he's worth, but his last few years he has just been okay, and he's so bad defensively that while that isn't typically what the Royals go for, again, he can DH against righties. He doesn't have to play the field. That DH spot is open against righties because Fermin's not going to be playing. Salvi will be catching. Vinny will be at first. So you can still put Glaber at DH. And then when Massey, needs a day off or it's a tough lefty, then you can throw Glaber out at second or something along that to
Yep.
where he's not fully exposed. And again, while I think his name may bump up his price a little bit. Sportrex has him valued at $7 million a year. So you're telling me you can get him for maybe like bump it up 3 for 30? Like that's kind of a steal.
Yeah, I think I like that. I mean, I think I wouldn't say the issue I have with it, but the second base outfield or the second base, third base free agency market, it's not a very deep class of
Mm-hmm.
free agents. So if there is, multiple teams that are looking for a second baseman, you got to think Torres is, first on most teams' lists. So there might be a little bit of a bidding competition there, but I like the move. I like the Jonathan India one too. I don't know if the Reds are in a position to move a guy like that when I think timeline is not that far off from what the Royals are right now. I think it had injuries gone a little differently this last season for them. I think they probably would have been a more legitimate playoff contending team. So do they want to move a younger piece like that is going to provide wins for them? I definitely like it though, because I think not only does he give you that right-handed infielder you're looking for, he also gives you potential leadoff guy, which is still
Right.
something we need. If we don't acquire in the offseason, then yes, you're still looking internally, trying to figure out who can platoon at the starting spot there at the top of the lineup. But I like Torres. I like that one a lot. I think I would be perfectly fine taking him and seeing what he's capable of. He does have some of the power too, so he could give you some power pop there. As long as those strikeouts stay down, the defense plays solid. But
Right.
how about there's another guy we've talked about him off air before too, and I think we've mentioned him in an episode too, down in Tampa Bay that we've considered as a trade piece.
Yeah. Are you talking about Brandon Lau?
Yeah,
He is a lefty, but he brings so much thump that
yeah,
like
he would allow you to kind of switch around some other pieces to get you your right-handed infielder we're talking about.
Right. Yeah. And he is owed 10 mil. He is the highest paid player in Tampa. I going off track a little bit. Tampa's paying the Yankees 15 million this year to
Yeah,
play in their stadium.
I saw
And the
that.
highest paid actual player is only 10.3 for
Yeah,
Brandon Lau. So
that's
like
wild.
um
That sucks for them. They might honestly, again, to sidetrack here, the Tampa Bay Rays might not exist in 2 years. They might be moving elsewhere
yeah.
because they can't get their current stadium's torn to shreds. Can't play in it for a couple years. They were trying to get a new stadium. Those contract talks have stalled.
Yeah.
Now they have to play in a divisional rival's spring training facility. Things
Yeah.
aren't looking very bright for them.
And that new 15 mil in the books, maybe they try to trade a Yandy Diaz, and who would be terrible defensively, but he does have history at second, and or Brandon Lau, because those are their two highest paid players. So it
Yeah,
is something to keep an eye on, but um, not
yeah,
not quite
those
something
would
I
be
know
the
if the
moves I
Royals are
think
going to be
seem
for. Yeah,
realistic.
yeah.
Let's move on to the outfield. Obviously, outfield production was a struggle this last year in multiple spots. I think overall, Kyle Isbell held down center field pretty well for what you needed him to do. You were okay with him not being a strong bat option.
Hmm.
However, you can only overlook that for so long if both your corner outfield spots are also producing at a low level. So we said left-handed outfielder here. That could be just an uptick from NJ Melendez, which sounds like from a Royals perspective, that's what they hope for.
Hmm.
But what is it you're looking for out of this left-handed outfielder?
So the reason that the left-handed outfielders in our perfect one, even if some fans are done with MJ, Piccolo's basically come out and said that they expect more from MJ. They've circled him in, and I've got to think of this like if I'm the GM. So like MJ, they have penciled in left field. He's probably going to play 130 games out there again if he's healthy. Like that's kind of what the Royals see in him. Whether you love that or hate it, like that's kind of what they said they're going to do. So I'm shifting now to the other side to where Hunter Renfroe's in right for another year. What's the best way to maximize that? And it's to bring in some sort of platoon that can also play against the lefties. And there's a couple options out there. I think the best ones are honestly on the trade market. The Giants are out there saying that Mike Yastrzemski, I would just call him
Yeah,
Yaz. Yeah.
Yaz, Mikey Yaz.
He's a little bit older, but he has an 800 career OPS against right-handed hitting and would be a perfect platoon with Renfroe. Both guys are, I think, around 34 years old. Neither guy needs to play every day anymore. They both have their strengths defensively. Renfroe doesn't have the range, but he makes up for it with the arm, while Yaz gets a little bit better jumps, even though the speed's not there either. But I think that would be a good one. You know how I feel about Newt Bar. I don't know if he's going to be available, but he immediately fixes the leadoff issues. There's also other guys in the Cardinals system, whether it's a Donovan or a Burleson, that's corner outfielders, all lefties. They have so many outfielders that it just feels like they have to be looking to move one of them.
Mm.
There have been no reports suggesting that right now. So I'm a little scared to like fully dive in on the Cardinals, but it just mathematically it makes sense that one of them would be on the move, and I think the Royals should be in on them.
Yeah, he seems like a Royal for sure. Outside him, there's a couple other free agent guys we've mentioned, I think, briefly before. A Jesse Winker type, a little bit older outfielder, which isn't really what you're wanting necessarily, but he could fulfill some of that role. You've got, if you want to take a flyer on an Alex Verdugo, I know he didn't have the best of seasons with the Yankees, and Yankee fans want to run him out, but a guy that's still got potential. And then the other one I've mentioned to you before that just to me, he screams a Royals offseason signing. He's also torn us apart over the years. That's Max Kepler.
Yeah.
Doesn't push the needle a ton for me, but he seems like a guy that he's hitting Kaufman well in the past, and he wouldn't cost very much at all.
Well, and the reason for this is perfect because it helps save money. Because again, like I'm not acting like the Royals are broken, like they need to like save everything, but I'm trying to act realistically in what their market. Yes, they've spent so much, on Lugo and now Waka that I don't think they're going to be going out and getting Gleyber Torres, Anthony Santander, this, that. What are moves that they can realistically make that benefits how their current roster set, and bringing in a guy that to platoon with Renfroe significantly opens up your options and your paycheck. So if it's a guy that's only going to play in 90 to 100 games and not 140.
It's funny you mentioned Santander. Of course, we've talked about that before too. I can't remember the site. I saw it now, but they had predicted Santander to the Royals for 100 million.
His
It just
defense
doesn't
is
seem like.
so bad. And like when you have already Salvi and Vinny and Fermin and like kind of the DH carousel you've got, I just have a really hard time with those DH only types.
So then let me throw another name at you again. We've talked about this before, but Jock Peterson.
I know, and he fits in that he's that DH only type to where, sure, like he won't play against lefties at all because he can't hit lefties, but it limits. Like at that point, Fermin becomes just only
Yeah,
against
it seems like it actually puts more of a limit on your lineup than anything.
right. I don't know. And for anyone that's like, oh, well, then just trade for me. You cannot trade for me. I understand you want to trade value at its highest. Like we wanted them to trade Witt earlier. We wanted to trade Whit Merrifield. I forget. I need to specify nowadays. Whit Merrifield early. We wanted to trade Scott Barlow earlier. Like there's a lot of guys that they waited too long on. For me as a catcher is completely different because the value of having him as your backup it
Yeah,
completely
if you did
changes
do
what
that,
you do.
you don't have a backup that's ready yet for the
Correct.
major league level. Then
So
you have to
he's
go
not
and
expendable.
spend assets to get that. Yeah,
Even though
I'm
he
with you
seems
there.
like a surplus that makes sense to trade, I don't think he's expendable, especially at this point in Salvi's career. So,
Yeah, I'm with you there.
okay.
All right, let's move along to the one that they always sign every offseason is the super utility guy.
Yeah.
We've seen this be a wide variety of guys in the past. Garrett Hampson this last offseason. We've had the Chris Owings before in the past and saw that fail. But we know they're going to go after a super utility guy. I mean, Adam Frazier, I guess you could throw in that category last year. And then there's this someone I'm totally blanking on from 2 or 3 seasons ago that they
Chris
brought in.
Owings?
No, not Owings. It was after Owings, but before Hampson and Frazier.
Huh.
I'll think of it while you're talking. I'll look it up while you're talking about it. But they always have a super utility guy that they bring in that's capable of playing anywhere around the diamond, ideally, or at least the second, third, shortstop, outfield spot. What are you looking for in this type of role? In any guys that you think fill it?
This is if you haven't already turned us off now, this is maybe where you turn off the episode because I think they should just run it back with Garrett Hampson. I really do. And like I know he had some brutal stretches this last year, but he does everything you want. And if you shore up the other places, like we said, you bring in a bat to platoon, you bring in another guy to play in the infield to kind of platoon with Massey / BDH against right-handed pitchers, like then Garrett Hampson's role diminishes, like it gives Isbell a day off against a tough lefty. If you're playing Gleyber Torres in the field or whoever, this hypothetical second baseman, if they struggle defensively a little bit, you can bring Garrett Hampson in to play second late in the game. You can bring him in as a pinch runner. I know he's not the best base runner, but he still has speed. Like, I just think he does so many things well that if they diminish his role, he was starting way too frequently for the Royals last year, so he got exposed. If you bring him back with these other additions made to where his role is diminished, but it's more of like a late inning guy, kind of like we see with Blanco, only on the defensive end, I think it really lengthens what you can do with Isbell, with Torres, whoever's Massey, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I think like you said, that if it's in a more limited capacity than it
Right.
was this last season, I think most Royals fans could feel okay with that. Because yeah, he was solid defensively. He just didn't always have a consistent bat when you needed to, and that was also evident when you had other issues in the lineup during that time. But yeah, I think I'd be all for in that. I don't really have many other guys that are that utility that I think are realistic. Outside of Hampson, he's not really super utility, but I've seen a lot of talk about Jose Iglesias being a fit here, second, third, short. But I don't know if there's really that guy that says outfield, infield to me.
Kike Hernandez is
Yeah.
interesting because I still think he'll be cheap. He's a good clubhouse guy. Manuel Margot doesn't play the infield, but he's a good righty in the outfield that can play center and right if you need to.
What about Ahmed Rosario?
Yeah, Ahmed Rosario is another guy. I don't, as long as he's ready to make that transition in his career. For whatever reason, he didn't stick with Tampa, didn't stick with the Dodgers this year. I don't know exactly if he's, ready to call it quits or what kind of, if he's washed or what his whole status is. He definitely didn't have a good 2023, but he's someone that I could definitely see maybe a minor league invite to see if he's still got it and could take over that role.
I hear Adalberto Mondesi is available.
Yeah. I mean, that ship has sailed. It's too bad, man. It was a
Same
good
with
looking
same
ship.
with Whit Merrifield. I don't see Whit Merrifield coming back.
Yeah,
I
with
personally would
too.
take Whit back, but I don't think the Royals would go that route again.
Right.
And then as far as internally, yes, you could still throw Nick Lofton in this role. Again, the reason we were hoping to leave Nick Lofton off earlier was you don't want him as an everyday starter, but if you had to be your final bench rotation piece, that's not bad.
Yeah, I think Nick Lofton, if if they didn't sign someone in because there's no one available, they didn't want to bring Hampson back.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the speed aspect, but he has all the. He can't play center. That's
Yeah, I see.
part of
That's
the
the
issue.
downside is he wouldn't be your
You need
backup
someone that
center
plays
fielder.
center in this role, because if you don't get someone that can play center in this role, it shifts everything else we've talked about. Then that outfield bat probably needs to be able to play center,
Yeah.
or
Which
so
makes it feel like a guy like Blanco is going to be on this roster where they're going to carry, if they don't have a utility guy,
yeah,
they're going to
he's just
carry that extra outfielder.
he's so rough defensively. I
Yeah.
mean, I know he's fast, like and big, but he's so bad defensively.
I
I don't know
think
Blanco.
the other guy at the minor league level that has done a little bit of this didn't really perform well at the major league level, but was Nate Eaton, another guy
Yeah,
that's
Nate
super,
Eaton.
he is a super utility, but
I think he's even a minor league free agent. I wouldn't even be
he might
surprised
be.
if
He
some
might
other
be.
team snatches him up just because he's kind of a interesting last ditch, the A's or the White Sox or someone like that needing a
By
guy
the
like
way, the
that.
guy I was thinking of was Matt Duffy. That was the
Oh
other
yeah, Matt Duffy.
infielder. But I've also seen people say, well, what about Nicky Lopez? He's back on the free agency market.
Yeah, he's a lefty, and just he doesn't. I mean, might as well bring Adam Frazier back if you're going to bring
Yeah.
Nicky Lopez back.
All right, let's move along to our last one here that would summarize. So again, Royals go get the three guys they need for this position. The really last thing they need to do is add another right-handed bullpen arm. We saw the lefties late in the season were locked in and loaded. I'm using a lot of L's there because they were stressing the lefties late. Pretty much all those lefties feel like they're going to be back in some capacity. Bubich and Lynch will be able to compete for the fifth starter spot with Marsh. You assume one, if not two of them, are going to be in the bullpen. You've got Zerpa, who's going to be back. Sam Long can't get options, so he's more than likely at least starting the year on this team. So you've got quite a bit of lefties there. What you really need is another reliable right-handed pitcher to throw at the end of the games there with Ursig and Harvey to really just round out the bottom of this bullpen, right?
Yeah, I think that's like right now you love Urseg as your closer. You feel really good about that. And like Hunter Harvey, I get it. His 4 innings of work or whatever it was in Kansas City wasn't the prettiest. It was not what we were expecting when they acquired him early from the Nationals, but he has a track record. He has had a lot of time off as far as like pitching and stress. I still expect him to be a good eighth inning guy. And
Mhm.
so if you're getting that from Hunter Harvey, then you need another guy because a lot Zerpa, while he can pitch against both sides, I don't know if I quite trust him to be every day seventh inning guy. Same with Sam Long, same with Bubich, even though he was the eighth inning guy down the stretch. Like I just need one more guy to really solidify that 7, 8, 9, and I need it to be a righty. And Clay Holmes is kind of the guy I'm looking at. He is a guy that I his price is gonna fascinate me because he's a two-time All-Star. He was a closer for the Yankees for a while before getting demoted this year because he had some really bad numbers, but then looked great in the playoffs. And he's a ground ball pitcher. And you know who has the best ground ball defense in all of baseball? The Kansas City Royals,
Yep.
because Michael Garcia and Bobby Witt Jr. are machines over there on the left side, and Massey can hold his own on the right side. So like I think it just makes too much sense for Clay Holmes to come to Kansas City. I don't know. I think you could get him around the same price. I think Glaber is 3 for 30, maybe even a little cheaper. Relievers are so weird on price because it's like the top end guys get around like haters I think making 19 mil over
Yeah,
5
something like that.
years. And so I don't know what a guy like Clay Holmes is going to have who has a track record, but also has stumbled along the way. Maybe you can get him for 7 mil a year. I don't know what the market is, but I think it should be very affordable
Yeah.
and really solidify that.
Yeah, I think Clay's one I've definitely really come around to the last week or so as probably my top choice for the bullpen.
Yeah,
I think the question with him is how are other teams going to value him in their bullpen?
right.
Do they look at him as a back end reliever? Do they look at him as the closer?
Some teams are looking at him to start, and if some team actually offers him starter money, kiss that dream
You got to
goodbye.
take, yeah, you got to take it.
Yeah,
But so that's why I think this one of all the ones we have on this list, I think this is the one I'm least concerned about because there's a lot of free agent options, and
right.
you can always go find an arm or two. You have guys internally. Does Carlos Hernandez make a jump this offseason? That's something we could talk about
And
another day.
Cruz too, even
Cruz,
down the
yeah,
stretch.
Royals have about 3 or 4 guys. I think even Jonathan Boland's one you could look at if they ever decide to move him as to a reliever role. So they have options internally, but even on the market now, a lot of these guys are older, older free agents, which is why they're going to be free agents. But Kenley Jansen's going to be around. I've seen him linked. I've seen David Robertson still linked, even though he's almost 40. Joe
Jeff Hoffman.
Kelly, Blake Tryon, yeah, all these guys that are 35 and older relievers. There's going to be a lot of them available that I think the Royals have a chance of going and getting a guy like Yaimi Garcia, Kirby Yates, Luis Garcia. I mean, there's just
Yeah,
so many right-handed guys. I mean, one we talked about as a trade candidate, and I think unless this has already come out, but Lucas Sims with
yeah.
from the Reds got traded to the Red Sox, but he's one that we talked about as potential midseason addition. So there's plenty of guys that could fulfill this spot. So I'm not too concerned in the short term.
Right, and Jeff Hoffman's another guy, all-star for the Phillies this year, who has already been linked to the Royals. Like a week or so ago, he came out as the Royals were interested in. But he's another guy like Clay Holmes, where he's a former starter for the
Mhm.
Rockies, and because he's had success the last 2 years, teams are looking, kicking tires, being like maybe he can go back to being a starter. And so if he gets starter money again, it's another good quality righty off the board.
Here we go. Another one that if this was MLB The Show, I would take him because I just love having him on my team. But Erasmo um, Ramirez from the Tampa Bay Rays. He's another one.
He's so old, man.
I
Like
know he's like 35, but on MLB The Show, he's just I don't know. I've always had him as a back end bullpen piece over the time. I think because I'm playing, I'm thinking of him like 2019 time where he was
oh, gotcha,
30 and just
gotcha.
locked in.
Yeah,
But yeah, there's a lot of these old relievers out there that
and
the
it's
Royals could easily swoop up.
I'm curious to see just how aggressive they are because Carlos Hernandez is out of options, so he's probably going to have to be on the major league roster. They've been pulling Cruz along for years now, and he finally started to show some command here in his limited action down the stretch.
Mhm.
Chris Stratton has to be back. And then we've got Schreiber. We've got Harvey and Ursick. So there are some righties already, but it's like, all right, do you want Schreiber to be that guy again? Do you want to go around the Hernandez carousel again? I personally don't, so I would love to see them spend just a little bit of money on shoring up that righty.
And they could probably sign 2 or 3 of these guys. I think another one, he's towards a little bit lower end of the free agency list, but had a pretty solid season for the Tigers. That was Shelby Miller. I mean, he's made the full conversion to the bullpen the last couple of years. He's been okay. But yeah, it seems like most of these guys are 34 and up. They've had reliable years. You've got a couple of those in the bullpen already. It'd be nice if you could figure out how to get Stratton's contract off and use that cash for something else, but that's not happening.
I don't think that's happening.
Or you got to figure out how to Jordan Lyles it like they did with him this last year.
Oh man,
I still would love to know what actually happened with him and where he is and all that. But anyway, those are our 4 moves for the Royals' perfect offseason. Obviously, those don't answer every offseason question. They could, one of the solutions to this answer could also be just bringing back Michael Lorenzen and shifting guys around. We didn't talk about that in this. We didn't really dive into much about the leadoff hitter and other ways to go about it, or just the general outfield bat that they could add. But those are the 4 moves I think Chris is saying. If they go about it in that way, those 4 moves, that type of role would kind of perfectly summarize the squad that we would need to go and get back to playoffs again. And of course, see some improvement from some of the other guys within the organization already.
Right. Yeah. And Glaber, Yaz, and Jonathan India all have bat lead off this last year for their team. So
that would be an option there. But yeah, that'll wrap it up for this one. Again, if you guys have any other Royals takes you want to get off or send our way, Royals questions, off-season questions, if you want to dive into any minor league players, guys you want some information on, feel free to send them our way. Just shoot us a message on Twitter at KCSA Pod, DM us, comment in the section here, leave anything there you want to know. And we'd love to talk about it. We'll continue to talk some more Royals off season as things progress. Still pretty early into the winter season. I know it's November, but it doesn't really feel like winter yet, but it's getting there, and sooner rather than later, it'll be time for pitchers and catchers to start making the trip down to Arizona. So there's a lot to get into in the off season, and we are here for all of it. So make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button below. Coming back for every single episode we have for you, for not just Royals, but Chiefs, KU football, KU basketball, and of course, all of our sports betting content. But that'll do it again for this one. Thank you guys as always, and we will catch you in the next episode.
It was good, John. It's your boy JD6 here with my man. Shout out to KC Sports Authority. Make sure y'all go check that podcast out, man.
You heard the man.